Hey, everybody, it's Dave here and Darren over there. We were just talking about the fight last night and the crappy job Netflix did. Hopefully, we won't be as crappy nor have the server problems that they did. But we are here today to talk about some Vikings football. We have three themes as usual. First one's going to be, again, with Sam Darnold. We'll get into that after last week's game. Then we hit This Week in Vikingsland, and we got a few bits and pieces there to go over as well. Followed by the game preview as your Minnesota Vikings travel down to Nashville to take on the Tennessee Titans. I want to welcome everybody in the chat, and let's get going with two old bloggers. Let's rock. Vikings First and SKOL presents This Week in Vikingsland with Darren and Dave, your two old bloggers. And we're back. Hey, Darren, how's things in the Great White North?
Just fine, Dave. Did a little bit of, said much like yourself, was watching the fight last night. I haven't watched a boxing match in a long time, but Mike Tyson sucked me in again. Mm-hmm. Just like he did the time I paid the money to watch the pay-per-view of him and Michael Spinks, and Spinks lasted, the 15 seconds?
Yeah. I remember those days. Pay-per-view would be on HBO, and the fight would last less than a minute.
Yeah.
People were screaming, why I pay all that money for? Hey. They didn't call him Iron Mike for nothing. Nope. Dude was the strongest, meanest, baddest sumbitch on the planet. So it is what it is. Now,
not so much last night, though.
No, he looked all of his 58 years. Yes, he did. Now, speaking of old and returning to old habits, that'll be in theme one. But as you can see, I said preview. Bradbury and Ingram will be tested. Yes, they will. And we'll find out how in a little bit. But first, theme one.
Again with Sam Darnold. It's a little tip to the old Simpsons episode where they had the Star Wars or the Star Trek thing, and Klingons were coming, and Captain Kirk goes again with the Klingons. If you don't remember that was like in the late 80s. But anyway, I know that this has been the topic du jour in the Viking sphere this week, and we're almost a week away from the abomination that we saw last week. But I did want to touch on it this week a bit, and just because. And so, just want to get at it. And okay, Sam Darnold last week, the 3 interceptions against Jacksonville. Was actually through 4, of course, but 1 got called back due to a defensive penalty on Jacksonville. But when you have that on the heels of throwing 2 interceptions against the Colts the week before, plus the fumble that got returned for a touchdown, the questions have started all week. Are the Vikings in trouble? Is Sam Darnold and his turnover-prone ways right now going to cost the Vikings and ruin the season that looks very, very promising at this time? And so I want to get into that a little bit, and as many others have this week, but clearly it's a problem when you have 5 interceptions in 2 games, or 6 if you want to count the one that got called back. So that is, that's really, and it's been, Dave, a mix of a couple of things. Some poor decisions by Sam Darnold, Think the throw to TJ Hawkinson in the Colts game when he's double covered, that pass had no chance of being completed and had every chance of being intercepted, which it was. And along with the poor decision making by him, the other mix of it has been some poor ball placement. Think the throw to Justin Jefferson, the first one, or the first one in the end zone where Jefferson is wide open, but he underthrows him and it gets picked off. So it's been a couple of things with Darnold, and that's raised questions again. What are you going to do when Darnold's handing out turnovers like Christmas candy at the moment? Of course, Kevin O'Connell got asked about it this week, and he was very clear though right from the get-go. He said when he got asked, asked if he had considered benching Darnold during the Jacksonville game, something I thought about. This is why I'm not a head coach in the NFL. There's many reasons, but this is one reason. But KLC said not once did he think of that. And he also said that it would be craziness for him and the rest of the Vikings not to have 100% faith in Sam Darnold this season. And Darnold's done a lot of good things, so I can see that. But very smart of KOC not to pull Sam Darnold in that game, because if he had, we know that would have been a shitstorm, right? For the rest of the week.
Hey,
yeah, is there a quarterback controversy? All of that sort of thing. It would not have been good news. And the reason why that you stick with Sam Darnold in that game and every other game going forward is that there is no plan B behind him right now. That plan B was ended on August 16th when the Vikings put JJ McCarthy on the injured reserve for the year with the torn meniscus in his right knee. McCarthy was plan B. McCarthy might have went in the game last Sunday after the third interception if he'd been healthy, but he was not. And the KOC is not going to turn to Nick Mullins unless there's an injury issue with Sam Darnold, because he's just as turnover prone as Darnold and not nearly as mobile in the pocket. So Mullins is fine as a backup option, but not fine as a guy to supplant Darnold. So that's just the way it's going to be. And, KLC's comments in that game, Dave, after that game, another thing that he talked about was that he viewed this as a learning opportunity for Darnold and an opportunity for growth where Darnold will learn and grow from some adversity, which he's faced the past couple of games. And I think that's the important point here, though, Dave, is that can Darnold learn and make a little bit better decisions and place the ball a little bit better? When he got signed here, the feeling was with an offensive line that's going to protect him a little bit better, with the weapons that he'd have to throw to, with Aaron Jones to hand off to, TJ Hawkinson, all of that sort of stuff. And with KOC whispering in his ear, those sweet nothings, that he would, that would eliminate the guy who was coming into Minnesota, had thrown 63 touchdowns and 56 interceptions in 3 other stops. And that has happened to a degree, but I think Darnold is a guy, Dave. The way he throws, he takes risks. He's gonna trust his big arm, and he's gonna try to fit the ball into tight windows that maybe some other quarterbacks would not try. But the issue is that he also, along with that, he doesn't quite have the processing skills or the ball placement that, say, a Tom Brady had, that would eliminate some of the interceptions that we have seen the past few weeks. So interceptions are always going to be a part, I think, of Sam Darnold's game. We have to accept that. But can he dial that down a little bit and make a little bit better decisions, and so that you don't have the 3 and the multiple interception days that we have seen? And in the last 2 games, he's had 5 interceptions. That equaled the amount that he had the previous 7, which was also 5. So things are ballooning up a bit. But I think he can learn a little bit on that. And the interesting thing was that Arif Hassan, our old buddy, he talked about this earlier in the week, and he advised Vikings fans not to panic about what we've seen from Sam Darnold. One thing he pointed out was that, yeah, the interceptions were bad and Darnold didn't play well, but if you look at the whole game in total, Darnold was excellent until he wasn't. so he completed some short stuff. He was patient at times, and he made some good throws in a lot of cases. And the Vikings offense was rolling; it was moving up and down the field all
Between
game.
the 30 and 30s, it was nonstop.
It was, and he pointed out that in this game, Darnold's turnover-worthy plays were 9.1% of the Vikings of his pass plays, which is way higher than anything he has done this year, which was his career turnover-worthy play percentage is 4.1%. This season, going into that Jacksonville game, it was 3.9%. Maybe that's still a little bit too high for your liking, but that's been the career average for Darnold. He was way above that in the Jacksonville game. And Arif's point is that this was an aberration, he thinks, and that you're not going to see Darnold do that consistently from here on out, even though we're concerned about that. And there's a lot of fears and a lot of social media talk about, the real Darnold has returned. The guy that got run out of New York and Carolina is back. So I think that Arif his article is something important to keep in mind. And I know hope is not a plan, Dave, but I think Darnold is likely going to have another game or from now until however long this Viking season ends, where he does some things and makes some risky throws, and maybe one or two of them get picked off, and we can throw our hands in the air and we're disgusted by the decision making. But
he sucks again. Yes.
But he's also had those games against Houston. Think Houston and Green Bay, where 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, tons of big time throws, and he's had those games. And I think we've just got to hope that as far as this Viking season lasts, and it's looking good now for the playoffs, that we get in the key moments, in the key games, we get the Darnold we saw against Houston and Green Bay and some other games this year, and not the guy that we saw against Jacksonville.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think Sam will be just fine. He's going to calm down. We're going to get the Sam that we saw in the first 5 games versus the last few. I think something, he'll be settled down. KOC will whisper in his ear sweet nothings and say, hey, time to chill. And every quarterback has ups and downs during the season. Hopefully we just hit his down game and now everything's going back up. Should be. He has the talent. And we have a opportunity this week for a get-right game. So we'll see.
We will.
All right. That brings us to theme 2. This week in Vikingsland.
Yeah, hit on a few topics here and there. And going to stick with Sam Darnold. Just can't get enough of this guy, but going to stick with Sam Darnold here because even though he's had a rough couple of last games, overall his season has been very positive as far as for Darnold's career. This season has been positive for him and his outlook. And you're getting at, now that we're into the second half of the season, you've got people, I've been seeing stories chatter about what is Darnold's future going to be in 2025, and what should the Vikings do about Sam Darnold in 2025? I was listening to the O-Line Committee podcast, one of my favorites, with Phil Mackey, Alex Boone, and Jeremiah Searles, the two after the Colts game, in which Darnold had struggled with those turnovers, the 2 interceptions and the 1 fumble that he had. And that came up there about, again, what should the Vikings do about Sam Darnold in 2025 based on how he's played so far. And Jeremiah Searles stepped in and he said, well, obviously JJ McCarthy is your guy in 2025. But Searles also said, unless Darnold took the Vikings to, say, an NFC championship game and a Super Bowl, in which case Searles thought that the Vikings, then you Cyril's view, at least my interpretation of it, was that then the Vikings needed to re-sign him and extend him for not a long amount, but they would need to bring him back next year. And Jeremy Fowler, who used to cover the Vikings on a regular basis in the Twin Cities and now is an ESPN insider, they were talking about various topics, him and Dan Graziano, in an article early this week. And Fowler said that Fowler himself said he couldn't rule out the Vikings re-signing Darnold to a 2-year deal, reasonable deal, depending on how Darnold plays over the final couple of games. And I've seen other chatter on social media about, again, what if Darnold takes us to the Super Bowl and we win it? Like, you got to re-sign him, right? Or should the Vikings re-sign them? And I guess I'm a bit surprised to get those takes, Dave, because I think that my view is that even first off, if Darnold takes the Vikings to the Super Bowl, that is awesome.
Yes, it is.
It would be fantastic. Well done, everybody, including Sam Darnold. I will be over the moon happy, and that's what I want to see happen. But even if that was to happen, the Vikings play here should be the same as if they went 0-17 with Sam Darnold, which is they, after the season, they thank Sam Darnold for his service, wish him well, and let him sign with another team and hand the team over to JJ McCarthy in 2025. That is the move. That is the only move you make. And the reason I say that is because if you look back in training camp and the OTAs, Darnold was not, based on what we read from the various Vikings writers that were there, or Tyler Forness even, Sam Darnold was going to be the number one guy, I think, to start the season, but he didn't run away with the job. It was a fairly even competition, and McCarthy certainly wasn't outclassed. And Kevin O'Connell said in August, I believe, that we have our franchise guy in the building, and he meant JJ McCarthy, not Sam Darnold. So, yeah, Sam Darnold's played very well so far, and if he continues to play well, what would change? I don't think that changes your mind. Your franchise guy is in the building, and it's JJ McCarthy, and he's the guy you start next year. Yes, he's lost some time, development time, maybe potentially some on-field time with the torn meniscus in his right knee, but he's also got this year basically a redshirt year. I think he showed in training camp and in the short preseason that he's got the mental makeup to be your franchise guy and the physical skills too. I think that he looked like he was ready to take the team. And if you've got a red shirt to watch everything from the sidelines, soak up the pro game, the speed of it, and all the preparation that goes with that, he's going to be even more prepared in 2025 and even more ready, I think, even though he hasn't been on the field this year. So that's one reason why you don't re-sign Sam Darnold. And the other reason you don't do it is because if contract-wise, say Darnold takes you to the NFC Championship and the Super Bowl, Dave, if Baker Mayfield got 3 years and $100 million, and I think 50 or 60 million of it was guaranteed for what he did last year, one playoff win with the Tampa Bay Bucks, what is Darnold going to get if he takes you to a championship game or a Super Bowl or wins it? It's going to be way more than that. And that's just going to it's going to be a very large contract, even amount, even if it's over a couple of years. And that's going to take away resources, financial resources, from addressing other holes on the roster. And we have them: cornerback, defensive line, interior offensive line, inside, potentially how injuries go, who you bring back, who you don't. There could be other issues as well. So I think that's another reason why you don't do it. And also, you're going to be sort of, I think, wasting the rookie contract that McCarthy is on by having him sit on the bench and not doing anything. So those are two big reasons why, wish Darnold well, hope he balls out the rest of the way, takes us to the Super Bowl. But when it comes to what to do with him in 2025, the Vikings should just say no, and they will just say no.
Yes, they will. But we got to talk now. What happened to JJ McCarthy this week?
Well, yes, that is the only way you would bring back Darnold or somebody else, another bridge, would be if McCarthy's knee is not right and he's not ready to go in 2025. And we got some not great news this week from Kevin Seifert. I think broke the news where he said he reported that McCarthy got a biological injection into that surgically repaired right knee and that happened after they found some swelling and as his rehab ramped up. And so Kevin O'Connell was quick to address it when asked, and he said that, yeah, we saw this after the rehab. We wanted to get this done early so it's not a problem in the months to come for JJ McCarthy. And he talked about how that this doesn't change McCarthy's timetable for returning to the field for the Vikings. He should be ready by 2025 for training camp, I believe, and for preseason and all of that. So that's all good news. But, I don't love hearing this all the same, even though I'm hearing all the good stuff. Maybe athletes that have this kind of surgery to their torn meniscus, maybe this happens regularly when they ramp up the rehab, and maybe it's typical to get swelling like that. The knee just reacts that way, but I don't know that. And we're talking about the Minnesota Vikings here, Dave. When has everything ever gone?
Davey wants to know, anyone know what a biological injection is? It is, what they did is, as Tyler asked Ben Gessling to clarify, and why it was called a surgery, and then not a surgery, then a surgery, is they cut a 1/4-inch slit and then they stick in a scope, is what you see in the picture. Mm-hmm. And they look around. They're looking for something that's out of the ordinary, a leftover stitch, it not healing properly, whatever, but it gets irritated and they're looking to see what it is. Everything was cool. It just irritated from a lot of work in the rehab, and that is normal. I've heard half dozen different orthopedics this week, and they said, no, this is normal. This is absolutely normal that during your rehab time, there will be times when it gets sore and gets a little swollen. But what the injection is platelet-rich plasma, and that is taking his blood, it's run through a spinner deal, separates the platelets out, and it juices it up. And then they stick it back in there, and it improves the healing of the area. Then also combine it with some ultrasound to make the fluid go where it needs to go, and it will be fine. This is nothing. He's probably, all they did when they cut it, stuck a scope in, gave him the shot, and if it was a shot like mine, is a big needle. But he'll be back on it and to normal in 3 days, have a Band-Aid on, and that's it, type thing. I'm not worried about it. I don't think people should be worried about it, but I understand the PTSD, especially when it comes to quarterbacks and knees. Yes, I do, completely. But I think this one's going to be fine. He's probably going to be ready for OTAs.
Good. You'll let me worry about it then, Dave, because
I'll let you worry about it.
On the grass and jumping around and saying everything's fine. Just something to watch for, I guess. As I say, I didn't love seeing this, even though it appears to be routine, might not be the right word, or you said normal, I guess, for this sort of thing to happen. So, yeah.
But to me, somebody asked me, or it wasn't somebody, it was one bar Lupkus, and they said, what's your worry level? And I said, 0 to 10, it's a 0.5. Literally, it's that low. It's
this coming from the man whose head is meniscus torn, so you know something like that.
Mm-hmm. So I'm not worried about it. I think he'll be fine, and he's the guy to go with next year, without a doubt. And we'll get into why here in a little bit further. But
yes.
He is the guy.
Moving on. Yeah.
And you're right about KOC saying we found our quarterback. And that's another reason why I don't think Sam coming back, no matter what he does, is a possibility.
Better not be a possibility. I wonder. I just don't let Nick Foles won a Super Bowl once. Joe Flacco won a Super Bowl once. The Ravens had no issues replacing Flacco with Lamar Jackson. when they when they saw what they had. So I think the Vikings are pretty clear on what they have with JJ McCarthy. They've seen plenty, and they like what they see.
Yep. All right.
Kickers. Love talking about them.
Speaking of PTSD.
Yes, true enough. Last week we got into the unfortunate news that we had lost both Will Reichert and Andrew DePaula, two of our trusted specialists, to short-term injured reserve. Will Reichert's got that quad issue, so John Parker Romo was the guy who was signed to replace him. And I talked about how, yes, he's got a big leg, but can he make the kicks at the NFL level in a pressure-filled situation? That was my big question about him. And how would he perform in those situations? Well, last week against Jacksonville, he performed quite well in those situations. 4 for 4 in his field goals. And I thought that this was almost the perfect baptism, NFL baptism for John Parker Romo, the way it unfolded, because he was busy. He had pressure-filled kicks because in a game where the Vikings couldn't get in the end zone, every field goal attempt he made mattered, even more so than they normally did, and he made them all. But while they were pressure-filled kicks, Dave, they were not what I call difficult kicks. His longest kick was a 45-yarder, which in the NFL is a pretty normal range field goal that kickers make, seems like 90% of the time now. And the other ones were a 34-yarder, 33-yarder, and then his last one was a 29-yarder. Chip shots by NFL standards. So, and he made them all. A couple of them looked like they were going to the right, so we'll have to watch that if that's kind of a tendency for John Parker. Or we've been used to Will Reichert just banging them up down the middle all season. So we'll have to watch that.
Kickers have a favored side type deal.
But still, in hockey, we used to talk about how you always want your goaltender to get tested early in the game, get a few shots on him. You didn't want him to be cold and then have to make a big save late in the third period after not getting any work. Well, I would have hated John Parker Romo to not have kicked all game in a close game, and then in the last minute or so, he has to step in and make a 50-plus yard field goal to either to win the game for the Vikings or put him in the lead, and he misses it. I think that would have been a very tough beginning to his NFL career for Parker Romo. In this case, he's got 4 made field goals at reasonable distances, and I think that's great confidence builder for him. Make him believe he belongs in the NFL, and it's got him in the right state of mind and his teammates believing in him going into this game and games beyond. So let's see how this goes. But I thought this was a nice introduction to the NFL for John Parker Romo, something he couldn't plan himself, but the way it unfolded, I think works out well for Parker Romo and the Vikings.
I agree. And until Reichert comes back, I think we're going to be okay. And we saw this week, we saw last week when Reichert went out, we needed a kicker. This week, it was the Chiefs, I think. They lost their kicker. They had to bring in a new kicker. He's setting himself up for a job somewhere and very much auditioning for that. Yeah, he was on the Lions preseason squad at one point, but if he can prove that he can kick in the NFL during games, under pressure, the whole works, he's going to get himself a contract. So good for him.
Exactly. Yeah. People might think you can see your big leg, but until they see you put the big leg into use in an NFL game and you're putting them through the uprights, they're probably not going to trust you. Mm-hmm. He's gained a little bit of trust.
And now on to Adam Schefter.
Well, yeah, Schefter, some more news that Vikings fans probably didn't want to hear. Schefter had one of his podcasts rolled out this week, and he had Brian Flores on it, our defensive coordinator. And in that podcast, Schefter asked Flores whether he wants to be a head coach in the NFL again. And Flores said that, yes, he very much wants to be a head coach in the NFL. And so, of course, that gets Vikings fans, all into Twitter because they don't want to see Flores go. But, when Flores signed on here with the Vikings, I figured if he does the job that we think he's going to do, he'll be here 3 years maximum. And I still hope that's the case. But I thought it was interesting timing of all of this because, Flores has been asked this question many times in the past, and he's kind of danced around it and always said, well, I'm really just focused on where my feet are right now, and where they are is being defensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings. Well, he didn't really do that this time at all. He did say he loves Minnesota. His family loves Minnesota, but he did say, I want to be a head coach again. And I feel that, that the timing about this is just with Flores and the way the Vikings have defenses performed under him so far, people are starting to talk about him being a head coaching candidate in 2025. Flores is no fool, Dave. He sees where things are going. And I think that he's starting to get the messaging out there that he is open for business as far as being accepting, taking interviews and accepting head coaching offers if they come up. So he's getting that out now while the going is good. And if the Vikings defense continues to perform like it has, he's setting himself into a good position, even with the NFL lawsuit and the Tua Tagovailoa comments be damned, right? And I think that with this kind of comment and the whole thing about Flores being interested in head coaching job and getting potential coaching offers, that's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes, right, Dave? Like if your defensive coordinator is getting head coaching interviews and job offers, it's probably because the unit that they've been coaching has been an elite unit and has performed very well. And that's what has happened with the Vikings this year in 2024. So when Flores got here, we wanted him to transform this defense and turn it from a team that leaked yardage and points into a top 10, top 5 defense. So we've got what we wanted, and we have to accept that somebody else is going to want that talent on their team as a head coach. That's just the way it goes. I think the important thing here is that Kevin O'Connell had to know when he had Brian Flores hired that, again, he wasn't going to be here forever, likely, especially if he did his job well. So what is the succession plan for Brian Flores, considering that he probably will get at least some offers this offseason, I believe. You talked about many, many months ago, Dave, when we hired Flores, was like KOC should be asking Flores from the get-go, who's your Padawan? Who's the guy that you want to, you think could best take over for you if you leave? And maybe it's somebody in-house like Durante Jones, who was once a defensive coordinator for LSU. Is he maybe Flores tabs him as the guy who can come in and keep continuity with the 3-4 defense that he has, but put his own stamp on it? Or do they look at looking at somebody outside the organization who runs the 3-4 but does it in a different way than Flores, is just as innovative? It would be a fresh voice and a fresh voice out there, and have perhaps even more different ideas than Flores has on how to operate a defense. We don't know, but I think with the Vikings defense continues to play like they have, and Flores keeps on coaching like he has, Kevin O'Connell is going to be faced with that decision when the 2025 season ends, unfortunately for us.
Is he? You may think that. I tend to disagree.
Good.
Now,
I'd love to keep Flores.
There's a few reasons why. Now, if we do lose him, one of the benefits is we will get a 3rd-round compensatory pick for him because he's been with the team 2 years. That's a goodie. But it's consolation. But there are a few things that may hinder him from getting a head coach job. One, the lawsuit. Everybody knows about the lawsuit. He's suing the NFL. The old boys group may not like that. We'll see how that goes. Obviously, they're okay with him being a defensive coordinator, an advisor coach, or whatever you want to call it, be it at Pittsburgh and now at Minnesota. But that lawsuit still hangs over the group. 2, he openly disagreed with his owner in Miami. It's one thing to disagree with your owner. I'm sure all head coaches do. But to do it openly and in public has the owners going, whoa, that's a huge flag. Do we want to even risk it? That may exclude him. And then 3 is the makeup of coaches in the league. How many teams have defensive-minded coaches?
I couldn't tell you.
To start this season, there were 11 of 32. So roughly a third. Everybody else is offensive-minded with one special teams, I think.
Who's an
Harbaugh.
Sorry, yeah, John Harbaugh, yeah. I was thinking of the guy in New Orleans right now.
No, well, and there may be more than one, but John Harbaugh in Baltimore. There's most teams are looking, since this is such a quarterback-driven league, offense-wise. Most of the offense is coming off the McVay-style tree. And Aaron Schatz talked about it a bit when he talked to Tyler earlier, and we'll get into that. There was, you've got to have somebody that's going, generally, when a team changes a coach, they usually go opposite of what they had. So it'd have to be an offensive coach being fired, and then an owner willing to take on a defensive guy that has baggage because of the lawsuit that he openly questioned the ownership publicly of the Dolphins, that how he treated Tua in that whole episode, how he treats the offense, right? His defense loves him. Both Miami, Pittsburgh, here, they obviously did. New England before that. But it's the offense. Does he have an issue with the offense, like a former head coach that we had? There's all those things will have to align and be answered before he gets a job. Most of the coaches that have been fired so far, I think the 2 that have are defensive guys. If you're looking at how many head coaches are going to be let go after this season, take Eberflus, another defensive guy. They're going to be looking for offensive people to bring up a young quarterback. And they usually get fired because they suck. And since they suck, they were going to have a lower draft pick. They're going to rebuild, need quarterback whisperer type coach. They'll go offense. He's got a harder route to get there than just about any other coaching candidate. Now, the one thing he has done is proven how good his defense is. But it's going to be interesting. I'll bet he's our defensive coordinator again next year. But that's me. I don't think he's going anywhere.
I hope he isn't going anywhere, because I'd love to see what Flores could do with this defense a third season after they've added even more talent to it, however they do it, probably through free agency, because we've got like squat for draft picks. But I think that you're going to see even more improvement from this defense and better play a third season after he's got the players that he's already working with in it, and add some more pieces that fit what he does. So, yeah, I don't want him to go anywhere, but if the Vikings continue to be like third in the league or better in points against, and they go deep into the playoffs, those are the kind of teams that get their coordinators poached on the regular, right. And the Vikings would be one of those.
And T-Bass is right. It's a copycat league, and it will take teams winning Super Bowls with defensive guys to make this change once again. And they're going to have to figure out the present McVay style offense to how to beat it. It's all cyclical. We go through this every 20 years or so. It's like a big wheel, but we'll find out. I hope he stays. I hope he works out a nice long time. He gets paid well. He's a DC. Third year of his defense being built. Oh shit, yes. I don't
And
think
I've
he's
heard,
going anywhere.
and there's Dr. Proto's talking about it here, but there's no salary cap for the coaches. And it's been mentioned before that, well, you want to keep Flores, pay him like a head coach, basically give him a big raise. You couldn't give him the same pay as Kevin O'Connell, but you could give him maybe slightly less and call him assistant head coach or whatever, and he'll stay. I disagree with that thinking, because for me, I think for most people, unless you're getting paid like Mike Tice wages, who was like the least paid or the lowest paid head coach when he was the Vikings, because Red McCombs was skimping on stuff. But I don't think guys like Flores, who are that ambitious and want to be head coaches, the money is the deciding factor for them. I think that they're looking for a head coaching job to show that they're one of the best head coaches in the world and they can win Super Bowls. So yeah, you can try to pay him more to keep him as a defensive coordinator. But if Brian Flores or any of these coordinators want to be a head coach and want to be the man, they want to be the CEO of an NFL football team, they aren't going to stay with the team that they're with now for a couple of hundred, even if you pay them a million more or whatever it might be.
We'll find out. It's going to be interesting. Now, if we go to the Super Bowl, I think all bets are off, but we'll see.
Yep.
All right.
All speculation at this point.
Yep. Now on to theme 3. The game. Vikings
against the Titans. So it is a 7-2 team going on the road to face a 2-7 team. Equal easy win. Because that's what we're kind of hoping for, right? That's what's facing the Vikings right now. They're the 7-2 team going on the road against Tennessee, a team that's 2-7 and going nowhere and got different issues. This is one of those games where the Vikings, if they're as good as we think they are, they should win this one comfortably. But we've been saying that the previous 2 weeks too, and at other times during the season, and we've kind of seen how that's gone. So I think this game could be at least initially tougher than we would like, much like last week's was. But if you want a reason why, I think the whole game preview for this can be summed up by quarterbacks. And if you want to know the reason why the Tennessee Titans are 2-7 right now, it goes like this: Will Levis, Mason Rudolph, the end. And they got a pretty good defense, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But Will Levis has been their starter, and he struggled. And he got injured, and then Mason Rudolph came in for 3 games, and he really struggled too. So, but Will Levis is the guy the Vikings are going to face tomorrow, unless he gets injured again. But some of the things look good. Like he's got a very strong arm. He's very mobile quarterback. He can scramble. The completion percentage, when you look at it, looks pretty good. It's 68.2%. That's pretty good. But then you look at a lot of the other numbers, and he's just not throwing enough TD passes. He's got 7. He's got a lot of turnovers, 7 interceptions just there. He's getting sacked a lot. He's been sacked 22 times. So we all know that Viking fans have been like worried because Sam Darnold's taken more sacks than we'd like. Darnold's been sacked 26 times this year over 9 games, but Levis is getting sacked more, and his sack percentage is like 13% right now, where Darnold's is only 9%. So Levis takes a lot of sacks. I haven't watched a lot of Tennessee games, but I did watch the Chargers-Tennessee game last week, and Levis, to me, looked like he held onto the ball a long time like Darnold does, but the ball placement wasn't great, and he looked indecisive to me in that game. Didn't really know, wasn't very confident about where he wanted to go with the ball. That, to me, when you look at how the Vikings, Brian Flores defense handled an overwhelmed Mac Jones last week, starting his first game in about a year. And they just gave Jones fits. And I think the Brian Flores defense should be able to do the same to Will Levis. When you look at, I expect that Brian Flores, after the first 2 series against Jones, they basically decided they were going to go back to blitzing him and seeing how Jones would react, sending 5 guys most of the time. I expect that they're going to try to do the same thing probably right away in this one against Will Levis to see how he reacts. I think you're going to see a lot of either Blake Cashman and or Ivan Pace Jr. being sent as the 5th blitzer in this one and try to get after Will Levis because their offensive, the Tennessee offensive line is not that good. And they're starting left or right tackle. Watson is out of this game. Right.
Don't
he won't be playing
Van Ginkel.
Well, no, yes. But I take it sort of as that Grenard and Van Ginkel are going to get sent
Yes.
on the pass rush most of the time. But Pace and Cashman, they're the ones that are in those A gaps and B gaps and mugging, and they back out or do they go? You never know. But for Tennessee's offense, Tony Pollard is a quality running back. Calvin Ridley can be a dangerous wide receiver, although he's only got about 30 catches this year. But outside of those guys, nobody really scares you on the Tennessee offense. And so there's no reason why the Brian Flores defense, the way it has played all season pretty much, and particularly the last 2 games, there's no reason why they can't shut down the Tennessee offense and make things very difficult for Will Levis. And I expect that to be the case tomorrow. Defensively, though, with Tennessee, folks on the show, they may have heard the weird defensive staffs that have been surrounding Tennessee this season, where they're giving up 26.7 points per game, which is 29th in the NFL, but they are giving up the least. They've given up the least amount of total yards in the NFL as a defense, and the least amount of passing yards as a defense. And they're also ranked 11th. They have an 11th defensive ranking at DVOA, according to fantasy, the FTN. So they appear on the surface to be, even while they're giving up a lot of points defensively, that this is a pretty good team. Harold Landry is I think an underrated pass rusher, a guy that can cause you a lot of problems. And another couple of guys that can cause you problems in your promo are Jeffrey Simmons and Devondre Sweat, the rookie out of Texas. That's over 700 pounds of humanity, Dave, that the Vikings interior line in particular is going to have to move tomorrow. And if they cannot move them, that's going to be a big issue. So Ed Ingram, I think I've mentioned this on 90% of the shows that we've done for game previews, but Ed Ingram, Garrett Bradbury, Blake Brandel, they got to hold up against these big guys because particularly Jeffrey Simmons can cause you a lot of problems. He can wreck your running game, wreck your passing game if you don't handle him. These guys can be a handful.
Yep. We're going to see Ed Ingram's grades improved over the last 2 games, but that's because he wasn't going up against a Sexy Dexy or somebody like that. He now is on this game. Let's see if they hold up. And I worry about, we all know Garrett Bradbury's small when it comes to the center. He's going against one of the biggest guys in the NFL. It's going to be interesting. They are decent at stopping the run, but they're they're decent. They're not great. They're just good,
There have been 3 games, maybe 4 this year where they have given up, gobs and gobs of rushing yards. But there's been other games where they've shut the rushing attacks down. I don't think that the Vikings rushing attack is super duper great, but it's been effective as it was last week. But the interior guys will have to man up and account for these guys and to get it done. The good news, and watching the Titans defense, they play pretty physical. They fly around, and they play fast, at least in the Chargers game anyway. So I think that the DVOA giving them the 11th best defense in the NFL seems accurate to me just by the eye test. Watching that offensively, though, facing that defense offensively for the Vikings, a lot of talk this week, of course, about shell coverages that Jacksonville put on the Vikings and to contain Justin Jefferson, and also taking what the defense gives you because of those shell coverages. And watching the Chargers Titans game last week, The Chargers did exactly that. Now, I'm not saying they got shell coverage, but they were very content. They were very consistent. They leaned on the running game, and Justin Herbert was very content to throw short, drive-sustaining passes to keep things going. They were patient. They didn't take a lot of risks, and it worked for them. They won 27-17, a pretty comfortable win for them. Now, the thing about that, though, Dave, is that the Chargers' offense is, they don't have Justin Jefferson. They don't have TJ Hawkinson. They don't have Jordan Addison. And so they don't have the weapons that we have. And when you've got Jim Harbaugh as your head coach, he's always going to lean on the physical running game anyway. He always has in the pros and in college. And so the Chargers offense is never, under Jim Harbaugh, is never going to operate like Kevin O'Connell's offense is going to anyway. But there's things to be learned there by what they did, by, again, taking what the defense gives you, not getting too greedy, which is what Darnold did last week against Jacksonville and at times against the Colts. Can Darnold not do that in this game? That is the big question. We talked about that earlier in the show. He's got a bit of a break because L'Jarius Sneed won't be playing in this game, and he's usually one of the best, most physical and top cover corners in the NFL when he's healthy. He's out of the game, so that gives us, I think, a bit of an advantage on the passing side of things. But really, you can't say that the Vikings offense is struggling. They've had over 400 yards total offense the last 2 games, 57 total first downs, big advantage in the time of possession. So we're rolling, but it's just, you get down into the opponent's 30 and we're coughing the ball up or getting sacked when we can't get sacked, and it's costing us 3 points and 6 points. And we want to see 6 points tomorrow when we get into the Tennessee's 30 and deeper.
Drewster's in the chat watching us. He, on his show, Vikings Report with Drew, Ted, and Chris, this week talked about, he's got a theory that once we get in the 30s, from 30 to 30, we're a Super Bowl team. But once we get inside that 30, he thinks Kevin O'Connell's now becoming more of a reactive play caller as to reacting to what the defense is doing, versus a proactive play caller like he is between the 30s, having the offense dictate how they're going to run the ball, pass the ball, where they're going on the field, etc. And I'm going to keep an eye out on that because I think it's a great theory and it needs further investigation. But Drew, good eye, my friend, good eye.
Thanks for that, Drewster. Always coming up with the tasty tidbits, as he likes to call them. But yeah, I think offensively, this offense has been operating the past 2 games. They've looked as good as they've looked all season until they get to the opponent's 30-yard line or deeper. Then things go wrong. But just need, I think if you get the Sam Darnold who makes a little bit better decisions, like we said earlier, and if he's got over the turnover-itis, then we should be good in this game. But like the Chargers game, they won 27-17. I think the key thing in this one is it's got to be patience for Vikings fans and for the Vikings overall, because the Titans kept things close. They hung around in that Chargers game until late in the third quarter. Then that's when the Chargers pulled away and were up 27-10 at one point in time late in the fourth. I think that's the way. I don't expect the Vikings to jump out to a big lead in the first half and have the game salted away, and then we sit comfortably in the second half and watch the time go off the clock. I think this is going to be much like the Chargers game, where it's going to be close for a decent portion of the game, but eventually I think the Vikings' better overall talent on both sides of the ball, it'll show through in the entire game, and we will end up getting that comfortable two-score win that we all crave tomorrow against the Titans.
I think you're right. Now, there's one of the reasons we're going to hopefully comfortably get that is because Will Raggett said something.
Yes, good that you pointed this out, Dave, because the along with one of the things that the Titans have done poorly this year is play special teams. And Will brought up some stats where, particularly on kickoff and punt coverage, on punt coverage in particular, the Titans so far in 9 games have given up 537 punt return yards, which seems like a god awful amount to be giving up when you consider sometimes a lot of punts don't get returned at all in a game. So they're.
Do you want to know how bad it is?
Yes, I do.
Aaron Schatz, formerly of Football Outsiders, now of FTN, was interviewed by Tyler Fornes. Podcast only. It came out this morning, folks. If you haven't listened to it, listen to it after the show. It's podcast only. It is a brilliant interview. I compared, if you listen to Matthew Collar, he interviewed Schatz yesterday. Tyler's is a better interview. He asked better questions, more pertinent questions. Mm-hmm. But what Schatz said was that their punt return team, but their whole special teams are horrible, but their punt return team, they're on a historically bad. And Tyler asked him, well, how long have you been doing this? He goes, we got records back to 1979. This is the worst special teams unit since 1979 in the NFL. And he goes to give an example. They've played 9 games. In 8 games, they've given up punt returns of 20 or more yards. What do I always say? A punt return average, 9 yards, you get 9 yards, you're good.
Yeah.
Above 9 yards, hey, you're doing great. 20-plus yard returns, hey, that makes for some damn good field position generally. And I agree.
That's right.
Brandon Powell could have a big day.
He could. The counterpoint to that, though, is that, which was also Raggett's point out, is that the Vikings are actually last in punt and kickoff return yardage themselves. So we have not, Brandon Powell and company have not. One part of that is that we've barely returned any kickoffs at all this year. There's been a ton of touchbacks. So I'm not surprised why our yardage would be that low. But Nick Folk is 40 years old. He's the Titans kicker. And watching the Chargers game, his kickoffs do not reach touchback area very much. So if they do have to kick off, hopefully it'll only be once tomorrow, either to start the game or to start the second half. The Vikings are going to have an opportunity to return those kickoffs. And Brandon Powell and company, who's ever back there to return kick, this could be a game where they have that breakout game and rip off some big returns. And when you're doing that consistently, that also kind of explains why the Titans defense, why the Titans are giving up a lot of points, because and not giving up a lot of yards, is because their special teams is putting the defense in poor field position situations, making for short fields for the opposing offense, either to kick a field goal or score a touchdown. So just something to watch tomorrow to see if the Vikings can take advantage of the very poor special teams on the Titans.
Hey, I hope so. But again, it's all going to come down, I think, to this guy.
Mm-hmm. You are correct. If the Vikings with the way 5 interceptions in 2 games, Dave, if we had not been playing the Colts and the Jaguars, we played a better team that could take advantage of the mistakes that he has made better, we'd be looking probably at a 4-game losing streak right now and a 5-4 record, and we'd be freaking out. And
you never know. You never know. Down to the lower competition, and we had played better teams. We may have played up. And you don't want to give the wins back.
No. I'm not saying that, but I think if you had similar performances by Darnold, turnover-worthy performances by Darnold against better teams, the Vikings' chances of winning those games, like they did, they were able to beat the Jaguars They were able to beat the Colts with 3 turnovers each, but I don't think you're beating the Philadelphia Eagles or the Detroit Lions if you turn the ball over 3 times. Mm-hmm. Although the Lions could turn the ball over 5 times and win a game.
Oh, that was anyway. That was something.
Yeah.
Boy, did the Texans blow that one.
Thanks, Houston.
Mm-hmm. But anyways, now what was interesting about the interview? You guys need to go listen to it. But Schatz talks about the defense and how it started out being historic, one of the historic defenses, and has dropped off here in a bit. But it has a chance to regain itself. But we'll find out. It's going to be fun. Let's see how they do this weekend down in Nashville. And from what I gather, the weather is going to be decent. Like 60-something, no rain.
Probably lots of purple in the stands as well.
Could be.
Making their presence known.
Well, I would like to thank everybody that's joined us today. You guys have absolutely rocked on this Saturday, and it's been awesome. Remember, tomorrow, live at the 2-minute warning, I will go live, and you guys can join me, watch the final 2 minutes, and then we get to react together, and we'll have everybody from the Vikings First and SKOL crew join us, including Darren, including Sal, Tyler. Jonas probably will chime in from Germany, and we'll see who else may show up. So it's going to be fun. Hopefully we'll win another game. Any last words there, buddy?
No, sir, Dave. Looking forward to joining you on the show tomorrow. And hopefully we got smiley faces because the Vikings have pulled off a win.
Mm-hmm. And what do we say?
We say, SKOL Vikings, baby. And thanks for watching.
SKOL Vikings.
Like, subscribe, and ring the bell, and rate us on your favorite podcast aggregator. Darren and Dave, thank you for watching this episode of Two Old Bloggers. We look forward to seeing you on every show on the new Vikings First and SKOL. You can find our podcasts as part of the Fans First Sports Network. Sports takes for the fan, from the fan. SKOL, everybody!